In this episode with our 68 Cougar, if you own an older car, you more than likely have some leaks. We're going to take a look at how we can take care of some of those leaks on this transmission. Alright, so we're going to try and take care of some of these transmission leaks here on our 68 Cougar. This is a C4 automatic transmission, basically just a 3-speed transmission. But some of the leaks I've tried to take care of before. I have replaced the pan in the pan gas or the pan gasket in the filter. But as you can tell how clean the side of this case is, that the fluid is coming from higher above. And there's a seal behind this selector shaft that tends to leak on these older transmissions and even on some of the newer ones. So in order to get this out, guess what we have to take off again? The transmission pan, because there is a nut that retains that shaft on the inside of the trans that we have to remove in order to get that out and replace the seal that's behind this selector shaft. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to spray this down. We're going to take all this apart and see if we can't get that seal put in. Alright, so we're draining the pan right now, and the way you do that is you get yourself a large catch pan, because draining the transmission pan that does not have a drain plug in it can be messy. So you need an oversized catch pan for your whatever you use to catch your fluid in, so you're not getting transmission fluid all over the floor. And you want to start taking your bolts out from one end and work your way around the pan, so that when the pan lets go of the transmission, it will slowly drop and the fluid will start to come out just on the one end. If you start loosening bolts all over the place, fluid's going to go out everywhere and you're going to make a mess. So always start at one end, work your way around. Now I've got just one bolt holding the pan in the back right now, this back corner. And I've got most of the fluid drained out. So I think we can go ahead and safely take this down, and I won't get it all over the place. There's still going to be fluid in this pan, probably at least a quart. As you can see, now we get the rest of that fluid out. And everything looks good inside. The transmission's nice and clean. It really hasn't been that long since I had this apart before to put this gasket on. I might even be able to save this gasket and reuse it, maybe. So we're going to let this sit here and drain. It looks like I may, which I really didn't want to have to do, I may have to take the throttle or the valve body down out of the transmission in order to get at this nut to release this shaft. Now that's not really something I wanted to have to do, but this leak has been getting worse and worse and worse over the years, and it really needs a new seal put in there. So whatever we have to do to get this taken care of is what we're going to have to do. Hey guys, I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about a website that I've been involved with for a couple years now. It's called Mopar Connection magazine. This is the only online daily Mopar magazine on the market, and it comes free to you in your email. You can catch all the videos of Project Marcia on there, plus a lot of the other project cars that they have going on. And one of the things that they have too, they have a really nice web store where they've got t-shirts for sale and other things that you can buy that will help support all these projects and also help keep the magazine coming to you free of charge daily. So go over to Mopar Connection magazine at www.moparconnectionmagazine.com. Check out their web store and get yourself a shirt. Alright, so upon closer inspection, yes, I do need to remove the valve body from the transmission in order to access that retention nut that's in there. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the filter here, just to see if there's any. There's small bolts all the way around the valve body, and I'm not sure if there's any underneath where the filter is. So we'll take the filter down, get it out of the way first, and then we'll take out the other bolts. Alright, last one. Let's see what happens. Oh, yep, she loosened up, and there comes the fluid. Alright, we're going to take this out and see how messy we can get. Oh, okay. Alright. We're just going to leave that right how it is. We don't want to move anything. And I'm going to go find some more rags. Okay, so I know it's probably a little hard to see up inside of here, but what we are going after is this right here. There's a nut right on there that holds this shaft that goes to the outside on. So we need to remove that, and that'll allow that shaft to come out, and I can put the new seal in from the outside. Alright, so we've got a retaining nut on the outside here for the kickdown. See, that little lever comes off. And then this will slide in. Cotter pin holding the shifter shaft to the transmission selector shaft. Now, question is that going to come out of there? That is not looking real good. And This is why I don't like Fords. Their engineering is just so stinking backwards. There's no reason they had to put this thing together like this so that you cannot change that seal in the car without taking the entire stupid transmission apart. I mean, that's just... I don't understand that. Why would you do something like that? Oh, that seal will never go bad. Well, guess what? It does go bad. It does indeed go bad. Alright, so now I've got to try and figure out if I can get a wrench on this nut with the open end of it and get it to break free without rounding it off. This should be fun. Well, I wasn't sure how I was going to get this loosened up, but I did manage to. I found a what you call a crow's foot. It's essentially the end of a wrench that you can put a ratchet into, and I was able to slip that in there enough, and I got the nut to come loose. So let's go ahead and take this all the way off. And see what happens. Uh-oh. I didn't like the sound of that. Well, let's see. Okay, I'll deal with that in a minute. As this comes out, let's see what's going to fall and what's going to hang. Okay, that's our kickdown linkage. Alright, so here is the selector shaft as it goes through the transmission, and hopefully it is not worn excessively to the point that the new seal won't seal, because that would just make this a total waste of time. But we've now got that out. So I'll go ahead and get the seal out and get it replaced. It's pretty much just a matter of prying the old one out and then getting the other one seated in there nice and flush without distorting the seal. So I got my old seal out. Oh, it's a little hard to see, but it is hard on the sealing lip. So I'm sure that's why it was leaking. The rubber is just hardened up over age, over time. So I've got the replacement seal set up in there as much as I could by hand. I'm just going to take a small hammer and gently work around it evenly so that I do not distort this seal, and get it seated all the way in. Alright, so that should be in there as far as that needs to be. Now I just wanted to show you this. This is the shaft that goes inside the trans. So this goes inside. The lever screws on this end, or bolts onto this end. It changes the position of the valve body. Through the center of this is where our kickdown lever comes through. And there should be a seal in here. There was a rubber O-ring in there, and I'm just going to go through my box of O-rings and see if I can't find one that's going to seal around the outer diameter and also around the shaft that comes through there nice and tight so that we don't get any fluid leaking through the center of it. Now if that's the case and I need to get a different seal for that, this one I can get at without having to pull all the transmission back apart, because I can take off the nut on the outside, take off that lever, and then I can access that seal with everything still together on the transmission. Okay, well, I've got my shafts reinstalled in the transmission. The outer seal that goes in here for the kickdown shaft, I had to make one. Basically took a thick O-ring for a fuel injector that I had found in my stash of parts I keep, and it was the perfect size for the shaft, this end, the inner shaft, but it was too big to fit in the outer section. So I just took it to my grinder and I just lightly ground it evenly all the way around the O-ring until it was just a little tight to put in, and that made it the perfect fit. Hopefully that'll seal up nice on there and we won't have any leaks out of the kickdown shaft. Now the valve body's got to go back up in here, and there are two things that have to line up. One being this nub here aligns with a shaft on the valve body, and this has to be in the correct position to push on a valve here on the valve body that will enact the kickdown when you need to pass or you need to kick it down into a lower gear. Okay, I got my valve body back in. Unfortunately, I didn't have a camera on. I thought it was on when I was putting this up in here. The important thing was getting the selector shaft lined up and the kickdown lined up with the pins that they need to be in correlation with on the valve body so that we get those functions, and that's there where it should be. And we're going to go ahead and torque this in, and that'll leave the valve body done. Alright, I've got my pan and I cleaned it up in my my solvent tank. Got all the residue off the bottom of the pan, and I've cleaned up the gasket, and the gasket is actually in really good shape. The gasket may have 100 or 200 miles on it since I put it in. And that's another reason why I use these rubberized type gaskets, and these are available from just about any auto parts store. I happen to get them through Napa. You can reuse these if you don't over tighten your transmission pan. So there is a torque spec for these pans, and the gaskets will hold up if you don't over torque them. Now if you use a cork gasket, most of the time they're going to end up squishing out and they'll end up leaking. So that's why I like to use these rubberized gaskets. Another reason why I'm going to reuse it, not only is it in good shape, but it's really adhered well to the pan. So I know I've got a good seal all the way around on the pan side. So we'll just kind of put a thin film of RTV back along the upper side of this, clean up our flange on the transmission, and then we'll get the pan put up in there and let it set for a couple hours and dry up really good. So what I use is a Permatex brand, Ultra Gray. There's a couple different brands. They have the same type of stuff. There's Ultra Gray out there. There's Ultra Black. Don't use that blue silicone RTV because it will not seal. This was designed more for our newer vehicles, but it works great for transmission pans, oil pans, any kind of flat sealing surface, because most of the newer engines were designed in areas to not have gaskets, and they just have a thin film of silicone because the machining surfaces are so true that they don't need a gasket. So we're going to go ahead and just apply a thin film around the gasket surface. You don't want to overdo it. It doesn't take a lot. You don't need it squishing out all over the place. and we can see where it seals to the pan because it is flattened. So we're just going to apply that silicone to those areas. Alright, so that is got that ready to go back in. We're going to go give the flange surface on the transmission a quick wipe. Now there are certain holes in this gasket that are smaller, and they're designed that way so that you can get the bolts started in the gasket and it'll hold them, so you're not trying to need 3 hands to hold the pan up and hold a bolt and grab your ratchet all at the same time. So these are the two at the rear. So like I said, we're going to go get the flange wiped and we're going to get this installed before this sets up. So being as I let this set overnight, most of the transmission fluid that was going to drip down has already dripped down, and that makes it easier to get a nice clean surface here, one that is free of oils, because if your surface is oily or dirty, your RTV is going to do absolutely nothing as far as helping to seal whatever gasket that you're trying to get on. Got that nice and dry. We'll go ahead and put our pan up. Alright, so I looked up my torque spec for the pan bolts, and it gives it in foot-pounds. So I did the conversion. It's 12 to 16 foot-pounds, and what you do is you multiply that times 12 and you can get an inch-pound reading, because I would prefer to use an inch-pound torque wrench on these bolts. So we needed approximately 190 inch-pounds. I got all my bolts tightened, but you may not have heard my torque wrench clicking, because as I was tightening this, I was also watching the gasket, and I saw the gasket just start to squish out. So I stopped before the torque setting click, and this way I'm not deforming the gasket too much and creating a leak. So if we do end up with a leak here, I do have another gasket. I can take this back off, I can save the fluid in a pan, reuse the fluid, and we'll put a new gasket on and go with a little bit less spec on the torque to tighten this gasket and this pan up. Alright, well that's going to do it on our transmission pan service and our selector shaft seal on the 68 Cougar. Hope this was helpful to anybody who may have the same issue with transmission leaks on their Ford product. Not the easiest seal to change, but it wasn't too bad all in all. So we've got everything fixed up here. We're going to let this pan gasket set up for a couple hours before we put any fluid in it. But I want to thank everybody for following along. Leave me some likes and comments. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you know when the next video comes out on our 68 Cougar. And we'll see you again soon.